What's up, race fans? GridRival here. Thank you for joining us for the Azerbaijan GP, also known as the Baku GP. With me, as always, we have Ryan Booth, our Director of Business Operations, and William Laddie, Principal Software Engineer. So we're going to start the show off the same way we always do. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, leave us an app review, join our Discord. The link is in the pinned top chat of the YouTube video. And then we're going to be kicking it off with a review of the Monza GP. What a race. But I'm going to actually first start off with giving a little bit of credit and a shout out for everyone who has been subscribing and listening to us and benefiting from the advice. Our own Ryan Booth for Monza scored one of the highest scores in the entire game last week or 2 weeks ago now. As well as getting 4.6 or 4.8 million of contract value, something high.
It was like 7.
It was like 7?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate you. So my cushy first place seat in our GridRival Company League is no longer cushy, as Ryan is in third place with more team value than myself and a little momentum. So I will be vulnerable for a minute and say I am worried. Ryan has been threatening me with memes nonstop. So to anyone who says we don't give good advice, Ryan is proof positive.
Sometimes
that it does work. All right. So we're going to kick it off with biggest winners and losers from the Monza GP and how that went for all of us. So I'm going to kick it off with myself a little bit. I didn't have him on my main lineup, but and I know, William, you're going to have a lot to say about this, but was Magnussen. Had a good showing, did well. He wasn't on my main lineup, but I did put him on a few of my other lineups, up 2 million in contract value. And, obviously we'll talk about Baku and Magnussen and what's going to happen there, both in real life and the app. But that was a big one for me. Which ones worked for you guys? Who are your biggest winners and losers? I'll go into my losers after.
Didn't have a whole lot of winners in my lineup, unfortunately. I did take Pinto on a one racer because that was the only person that would fit in my lineup that wasn't Joe. And that worked. That said, I think Pinto is a little bit of fool's gold right now. We'll get into that later, I'm sure. Otherwise, pretty mediocre showing for my team. Like Norris, I saw a stat just the other day. I don't know how true this is, but supposedly he's the only driver who has not gained a position on his start the entire year. And he's also never held lead from pole on the first lap. And he's got to figure that out. And I think McLaren's got to sort out the papaya rules, as they call them. We can talk about that later as well. So, yeah, I'd say dollar-wise, Magnussen was a winner, but also a loser in that he doesn't get to race this week. So kind of weird to call him a winner. I do think Ferrari's on the upswing. So I think Leclerc's the other big winner, not that he was in my lineup. They won the race. Like, that's about as winning as it can get. And looking back at the results throughout the year, street horses have been kind to Ferrari. Australia, they double podiumed. Monaco, obviously, they won that race. They double podiumed that race. And Miami was okay for them. So we do have 2 street horses coming up, Baku, Singapore. Ferrari might be hot the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and big winner. We're not used to saying this, but Ferrari strategy, big winner. Who would have thought? Like, I couldn't believe they made it work. They did. What a great call by the team. I mean, Leclerc obviously made it work. He drove incredibly. But yeah, other winners, basically just everyone on my team. Albon, I think, was probably the top scoring talent driver, I have to imagine.
He was.
I used him. I used Williams as a constructor, and obviously Colapinto did pretty well. I actually considered using him as talent driver, but just out of principle, I felt like I couldn't.
Justice for Logan.
Justice for Logan. I'll be ringing that out the rest of the year. But I think going back to your Magnussen point, like F1 needs Magnussen. He is a chaos agent. He's now that Logan's gone, like I think I may be moving over to like the Magnussen fan club. I mean, the race earlier this year, he accumulated like 7 penalties and then just held up the rest of the grid, not caring. And then like he's a wrecking ball. It's great. It's a lot of fun to watch. So I'm hoping that he doesn't lose the seat to Bearman or anything drastic like that. So I hope he will be back. And then just watch out once he gets those penalty points reset. Like you thought he was driving crazy, like under the gun. Now he has nothing holding him back.
He and Ferrari have something in common. Like neither of them had anything to lose. So Magnussen's out of a job next year. Like both those hot seats are filled, and he's not filling them. And Ferrari had nothing to lose in the championship the other day. So yeah, go for plan X when you have nothing to lose, right? And it works out sometimes. And for Magnussen, his career, if he's lucky, has 7 races left in it. If I'm Haas, I don't know if I put him back in the seat after the ban. Like, why not just put Bearman? And it's not like Bearman's competing for the F2 title. I wonder if they could make those arrangements. Or maybe they don't want to pay Magnussen to sit on his couch. I don't know.
I need Magnussen in these races.
I think he'd be a better fit for NASCAR the way he's been driving.
Okay,
even NASCAR has limits too.
That's true. The Austin Dillon rules.
Yeah.
I am excited for the Logan Sargent, Kevin Magnussen 2025 IndyCar season.
The amount of merchandise I'm going to buy from his future IndyCar team is, I'll be propping up the entire sport by myself.
Imagine him and Grosjean on the same track again.
Oh, yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. Yeah. And then, back to the winners. Yeah, we have Ferrari as a team and Williams as a team both did really well. So lineups that had those selections did well. But on the losing side of the fence, I got burned by my Hulkenberg choice. So we've been talking a lot about contract strategy length and how to plan for that over the next few races, and mine backfired. I'm locked out of Alonso now for a talent driver selection, and my backup was Hulk. So I had Alonso now locked out for Hulk to come on to then get Alonso back if he's still a talent driver eligible. But Hulk is now cheaper than he was when I signed him by a fair margin. So Hulk was my biggest loser coming out of Monza. Really disappointed in how that worked out with all of my planning. Did you guys have any big losers?
Big losers. Like nobody really pops out as like this was just an awful weekend for them. I think we do see Racing Bulls, V-Car, whatever you want to call them, continue to decline. Like Sonoda was involved in a collision, had a bad day, and you'd mentioned Hulk already.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it was another down week for Red Bull, and I do think it's lean times ahead for them. Just as I was praising Ferrari on street courses, Red Bull, it's been kind of an issue. In terms of even just pace, like let alone collisions and mechanicals and things like that. Like they were just not good at Monaco. So I do wonder how the next 2 races are going to play out for them. Like I don't see them leading the constructors coming out of Singapore. Probably not even Baku.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
yeah, it's going to be close.
Red Bull looks like they could be in a little bit of trouble, especially when you consider Verstappen's a little bit of a hothead when things aren't going his way. It just feels like he's due for a DNF. I don't know. Maybe it's here, maybe it's somewhere else, but they clearly don't have the pace to keep up. They don't have a strategy yet. Like, I don't really know what's going to happen to them. Maybe Max figures it out, but it just doesn't look like it's been very good lately. The big loser on my team, I had one guy lose value. Lewis Hamilton lost 0.1. So that was my big loser, only scoring 145 points. But this isn't really a loser because they came in 2-3, but like McLaren needs to figure it out. I know they want to be make a serious run at both the constructor and the drivers championship. They seem just disoriented a little. Like you get these papaya rules. They've had drama. They've had a couple strategy mishaps. I don't really point to the 2-stop strategy here as a mishap. I think everyone thought that's what it was. I'll just give credit to Ferrari. for making one stop work, but I don't know if I should be worried about that. They've had some problems, and who knows if this boils over? Like, do we see Piastri and Norris get into each other? Because what Papaya rules was race with a lot of space, I think it was. And no one was really quite sure. It was extremely fun watching live markets during that race with the radio communications coming through, and everyone trying to figure out if Papaya meant hold position or fight. And you just saw wild swings. So that was a lot of fun. But McLaren's got to figure this thing out and figure out if they really want to prioritize Norris for the drivers' championship, or if it's truly just going to be we have drivers 1A, 1B, and that's where we're going with it.
They should never have let Piastri race Norris at any point if they wanted to maximize a 1-2 or even just maximize a win. Piastri going for it on the start is what I think set everything in motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I forget which F1 commentator said it, but when they were talking about McLaren, they were saying that, it takes more than a fast car to get the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. It takes the pit wall, it takes the strategy, it takes the execution, and frankly, it takes just a little bit of good favor from the race gods. So, I think now that you see McLaren have one piece of that puzzle figured out, some of the other pieces of the puzzle that aren't yet fully complete kind of show up even more. Because I don't recall like us really talking about like, in-depth poor McLaren strategy or things like that. And over this season, maybe a couple of instances of it, my memory is escaping me, but I think now where all eyes are on them to expect perfection, anything less than that's going to be met with more criticism than ever before. And then the last thing I'll say before we move on is that I don't discount the Red Bull Advanced Technology Center or whatever they refuse to call their factory a factory. It's some, it has to have some marketing term. I would not be shocked if they are churning out parts and spending their budget cap like crazy right now to test and learn and develop the car. So, I am not going to, I'll say it now for the Baku GP race preview. I'm not counting Red Bull out for the year because they will throw money at the problem, and they have what has to be probably one of the most capable factories in the sport. I think it'll be a super exciting back half of the season with this fight. All right, so let's get into the look ahead. William, why don't we talk about Magnussen real quick? I'll address how it happens in the app, then you can give some insights on what you think about the situation. But on the app, you already see it. Everyone who had a Magnussen contract now has Ollie Bearman in place of Magnussen. So Bearman is Magnussen. Finkel is Einhorn. Like it is whatever Ollie does is what Magnussen gets, right? So if you want to drop that contract, you're paying a contract termination fee. There's no free drops for a substitution. It is not the same thing that happened with Colapinto and Logan. Logan was dropped. Magnussen is just subbed out. That's how it happens in the app.
It is the same as what happened with Sainz and Bearman earlier this year.
Yeah.
Where Sainz had to sit out a race and Bearman filled in there. So it's going to be just like that situation.
Yeah.
And you'll resume having Magnussen next week if he's still under contract for you.
Yeah. Cool. Then we have, we'll get into the undervalued, overvalued, but actually some of the questions are already kind of steering that way. So first question, Archer, good week to pick up Aston. Newey will surely have immediate impact. Disagree on immediate impact. Engineering is a long tail implementation. So maybe they'll have a little bit more pep in their step, but I mean, Stroll is at, what is he at 12 million right now or something like that?
13. This is not a Stroll track for me.
Yeah.
this is a track with, you can hit a lot of things, and any track with that is not a Lance Stroll track for me.
Fact check. Lance Stroll once took second place at this track.
I know he did that, but I still am not trusting Lance Stroll at a track like this when I am looking for points. I am not looking for a Hail Mary right now.
Yeah, so as far as Newey having an immediate impact, if I'm Aston, I'm not touching the 2024 car at all at this point. Look at where they are in the standings. They're not in a fight with anybody. They're 40 points clear on Racing Bulls, and I think it's mathematically impossible for them to catch Mercedes. Like, they're very solidly fifth. I think Newey's going to give an incremental boost to the 2025 car, but I think that their focus is going to be primarily on the 2026 car, which is going to be a whole new rules package that year. So I think that's where you're going to really see the Newey investment start to pay off for Aston Martin. But yeah, I don't expect. I'd be surprised if you see anything in 2024 with the shakeup there.
Yeah, agreed. So wouldn't say it's probably the best week to pick up Aston just because of Stroll. But I would say Alonso is a good talent driver selection, still talent driver eligible under the cost cap of 18 million for talent driver. So still, in my opinion, a solid pickup for talent driver selections. And obviously has a lot of experience on this track. Second question was similarly, will this be a good time to get on board with Williams, both as a constructor and maybe Colapinto? I'm going to defer to our resident Williams expert, Ryan Booth.
I don't know if I like Williams here. I loved them at Monza. I had Albon talent driver. I had Williams constructor. I thought long and hard about Colapinto in the lineup as well, which didn't fit in with the budgets I had. And I put them all on purpose to have their contract, or I guess Albon and Williams to have their contracts end before this race. I do think you're still getting value there. I think they're underpriced, but I think there are just better options this week. And I'm not running to try and grab these guys on my team for here. Also, I mean, it's Colapinto's second race, and this is a challenging track. I don't know if that's the best recipe.
Yeah, so I sort of teased it earlier that I think Cola Pinhead might be fool's gold there. And yeah, so if we look at Monza, first of all, that was going to be a favorable track for Williams. I don't know if these next two tracks are going to be favorable tracks for Williams. That's issue number one. Issue number two, let's look at who Colapinto beat last week. He beat two Saubers, and he beat a bunch of cars that were involved in collisions, and he beat Alpine on a horsepower track. So I don't actually put a lot of stock in that result, and he almost threw it away at one point. He did have a pretty big moment, and the street circuits are going to be a lot less forgiving of big moments. Yep. So I do think that was a bit of fool's gold. Like it was sort of weird having to rank him for Monza. It was unfortunate that he came in there. So we were considering where does he slot in general, and I still think he slots in general towards the bottom. I just think Monza was a special case where things were going to be very favorable to that team. And hey, there is every chance that he gets a good result if he keeps the car in one piece and a bunch of others don't. That's the path to Colapinto having another good result this week and next as well. Mm-hmm. That said, I don't have a lot of faith in a rookie on a street course. So I'm bearish on Williams.
Agreed. I think we handled that one. What's the top team value in points in your guys' league? Good question. So I am leading our company league right now for the time being, at least. I have for most of the season, but Ryan's catching up. I'm at 15,272 points. And Ryan just beat me in team value, and he's now at 140 million. So that's where we're at. Ryan had a great week last week, as I said.
My value is like 1099. I'm like 1,000 points off. I'm not going to be three-peating this year. I've been wrong place, wrong time a lot of times.
But you are beating me in our other league that we don't talk about.
The secret league. Why didn't I just play the secret league lineups in this league? Why didn't I do that? I'd have so much more money right now.
Yeah. I'm competing seriously in 4 leagues right now, and 4 F1 leagues, I should say. And I am doing the best in our company league, but I am first in 3 of them. So I'm first in 2 of them. So I'll take that. What was the next one? Okay. I had both Chris Jennings. I had both Sonoda and Stroll, and was beating my head against a brick wall.
Rip.
Listen, that happens, man. We feel you. That happens. Nothing hurts worse. Also, like the only thing that hurts worse than that is like when 2 of your drivers get taken out for colliding into each other on lap 1, turn 1. Like That's the only way that moment is worse to feel. But listen,
Or
it's
if
the
they get
Baku.
DQ'd after the race.
Oh yeah,
That
that is
happened with
brutal.
2 guys.
Yeah,
And like one of them might have won the race.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When Russell got DQ'd, that was a heartbreaker for and it game changer in the app. The all of the leaderboards swapped so heavily with that Russell DQ. So
I had him.
yeah. With Lando being childish for not being first, will it affect his driving? Cry face, laugh face, because lately he's been acting like a sore loser. Well, and this is Jonathan Alcaraz. I'll give my input on that. Is like, F1 drivers are young, and I'm not saying young is like inexperienced or anything like that, but like like they're still developing as people and are in the spotlight 100% of the time. So like, and you only see a fragment of their daily life which is in the media and when they're racing. So I try not to count all that. I would actually say that like Lando's doing a good job with all the pressure on him right now. Team radios are not indicative of who they are as people.
And TV is picking and choosing what to give you. Like it's not like those radios are even live. Like they're definitely choosing what quotes to give you.
Yeah.
That said, we'll see if there is any friction that builds. Like, who knows what Lando's looking for? Does he want to get prioritized? Does he think he actually has a shot at the driver's title? I think the next 2 races are going to be very telling there. Like, if Red Bull continues to struggle on the street courses and McLaren knocks it out of the park, then we might actually have a proper title fight for the drivers. As it stands now, 62 points. That's a lot of points, especially with not that many races left. What is it? 8 races left altogether. So like mathematically, like Norris could win every race and take fastest lap every race and win the title. But otherwise, it's not in his hands. Like you're going to need Red Bull to slip up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if McLaren's going to prioritize him, it has to be now. They don't have time to like wait and see how this thing plays out. Like, you have to do it now. And if he doesn't close the gap, then all right, we're back to whatever the papaya stuff is. But
and if they want to, I wouldn't blame them if they want to prioritize the constructors. That is what the teams get paid on. In fact, some of the teams will give their employees bonuses based on like what they get from the constructor points. So if they decide to go that route, just prioritize the 1-2, which we saw them do a few races ago when they undercut Piastri. Like despite him being ahead, like they undercut him with Norris. Like I could understand that choice. But yeah, this is the decision point right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for anyone newer to the sport, just some context. So like the constructor championship points, William just said that's what the constructors get paid on. Teams make money from their sponsorships, but the money that comes from the sport itself is based off the championship points. And when you're talking the difference between first place and second place, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe it's tens of millions of dollars different. It's significant. It's like the cost of a car difference. That's when you're fighting for your life. Like, Williams as a team was able to survive as a not small company, being in last place in the constructors championships for the better part of a decade. And being in first is what bought Red Bull the advanced technology center that they just won't call a factory. So it's a huge thing. And I know McLaren's gunning for it. And also, McLaren's branching out into other sports. Zach Brown's splitting his time up in IndyCar as well now. So, I am a McLaren fan for McLaren's pursuit of motorsports in a broad sense. So, but same thing for Red Bull. Like they're doing a similar thing, just not in IndyCar yet. Next one, just a quick question for you guys. I set up a lineup right after the last race. Now my total value shows a negative number. What is this about? Okay, a little bit of inside baseball. There was a display glitch on the app where if you met the right conditions of when you signed Logan Sargent, and we canceled that contract and refunded you, it displayed twice. This affected a very, very small amount of total players. Like we're talking about a fraction of a percent of players. So it would have showed 9 million instead of 4.5 million if you added the two together. And then we corrected that, but kept the lineups intact. So any of your drivers who aren't under contract right now, if you just remove them, the number will balance out back to what it should be. So you're not missing $4.5 million. It was just showing $4.5 million that you didn't actually earn. But that was taken away. So you could just do a lineup adjustment and it will balance back out. Very rare situation. This is the first time this ever happened that I know about or William knew about. So apologies for that, but it's a very complicated game, and sometimes there are things, and also there's hundreds of thousands of devices out there. Sometimes things happen, but we try and be quick to correct them when something like that happens.
And I've spent the last week making sure that that's the last time that happens as best I can.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. There you go. Oscar acts far more mature than Lando, but Oscar does give off a lot more old man vibes. So that's not that hard. Yeah, I would agree. Oscar has that like old soul, and that very dry Australian humor, which I think especially to like people in America watching or experiencing dry humor for the first time, because it's not really our thing. It presents just it can make a 21-year-old look like they're 31 years old. K-Mag should drive the safety car, seeming he's so good at holding people up.
I like that idea.
I like that idea too. I like that. And also the safety car just crashed. So that's perfect, right? You can.
Yeah, maybe Maylander's washed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my chat just glitched out. I want to get to another lineup question. Thank you for the advice this week. Cole, Pinto, and Sainz hit big. This week is a doozy. I have to load in 5 new drivers. Grayson Holter. Grayson, don't get yourself into that situation again.
I see his comment further down too. He's locked out of Norris, Sainz, Russell, Albon, and Colapinto.
Oh man.
Okay, well, I was talking up Ferrari and Leclerc, right? So like we can still work with this. Piastri's available. And then, like I said, Leclerc's available. I like him for the next 2 races, like being street courses. I actually like Leclerc, given what we've seen from Ferrari.
Mhm.
I don't know how much budget we're talking about. Like Hamilton's still there. Like Leclerc, Piastri, Hamilton. Those are 3 solid choices.
Russell, I still think is cheap. Russell's under 23.
Yeah, Russell is still very reasonably priced. Since Mercedes didn't really, have a huge showing in Italy, which, that was actually a little surprising. Like I thought Mercedes was going to do a bit better.
Yep, and this goes back. I made this point on the last show that I was starting to look at. I want longer term contracts, so I'm not going to deal with lockouts, and I'm not going to deal with not being able to sign whoever looks best in practice. I will pay the fees at this point. Like if you've accumulated team value and you need points right now, like I will pay for points. I will cut guys, I will pay the fees, and then I will try and put together the best lineup I can every single weekend. And it's a lot harder to do that if you're locked out of guys, because Norris, Sainz, Russell, they could all go out and look like the 3 best cars. Everything is so close. The margins are so thin up at the top right now.
And as you're setting your contract lengths, make sure that you remember when those sprints are. Next one is 3 races from now. That's going to be Austin. And then 2 races after that, and then 2 races after that. Brazil and Qatar, respectively. So remember, drivers score points for sprints. Constructors don't in our game. So drivers will be a bit more valuable to have, like top drivers in particular.
Yeah, and
just another consideration.
And going back to we were talking about, is Colapinto a guy to have here? And we said no. I will probably have him on my Austin roster. I'd be shocked if I don't.
Because Logan got points in Austin last year.
Yes, Williams will be good there.
Yeah.
Well, there were also 2 DQs in Austin last year.
Yeah.
That still counts. P10, 1 point.
Best car that didn't cheat.
There you go.
Fair point.
If he cheated, he probably finishes on the podium.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, Grace, if you have any specifics on your team value, I don't think we have too many questions. Keep getting your questions in the chat. We're moving through them pretty quick. Maybe we could help you with a 5-driver lineup. Two comments about Perez. Perez won Baku last year, and being hesitant on adding Perez this year. Yeah, I think you're gonna not have great success with us promoting picking Perez. The only way I would pick Perez is, and I've said this before in previous chats, is uh, Perez has moments when he hits. So it's a little bit like, taking that risk of like, does he look great in practice? Is he closer in practice times to Verstappen? Is Verstappen doing well in practice? Then you might want to try and time a Perez hit. But like that always doesn't work because, he, at least last season, had a kind of crashy experience,
Yeah,
So yeah, okay, right.
Also worth noting, like that was a Red Bull 1-2, and that race was also held in the spring last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Bull's a very different team than it was a year and a half ago in terms of pace. And I think Perez is not the driver he was a year and a half ago. That might be a bit more controversial.
Yeah, the thing Perez had going for him is that his car was so much better than everybody else's. Then you had to pick your spots to like back him. He doesn't have that advantage anymore, so he's pretty much, in my mind, unplayable. I mean, Russell's like the same price as him, and I'm going to take Russell over Perez 9 times out of, I guess 9 times out of 9. I don't know why I said 9, but
Why
it's
is he
him.
seventh in the points if the Red Bull's such a great car, right? Like, let's just look at his past results: 8th, 6th, 7th, 7th, 17th, 7th, 8th, retire, 8th. It's not been good for a long time.
Yep. He had his issues when his car was by far and away the best on the grid. And now that's no longer true. So I will be staying very far away from him.
Yeah.
He's at his ceiling.
Yeah. All right. I'll hit 2 ones quick because then we have some talent driver questions. And I guess we didn't talk about talent drivers. So someone was just commenting Newey's contract doesn't start to 2025 anyway. That is true. And there's non-competes and things like that would prevent him from having an impact. But like there's also the non-tangible impact, right? Does like signing Newey now like amp up everyone in the factory and the team and like, that those good vibes just carry through a race result. But agreed, it's not tangible. And then Cody, I'm going to skip the last name. I'm a fellow hard last name person, but Cole was easily the best value to points last week by a factor of 3 to 4x. Colapinto was 4 million going into the event, and Albon and Alonso were the next highest scoring talent drivers, along with Colapinto. So Colapinto was like I don't know what the right term is, but like a moment that does not happen often in the game where someone who's ranked so low in salary performs so well in points and contract value. But as William said, circumstances.
Usually just the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And like we'd be singing a very different tune if he would have beached it instead of keeping the car on track.
Yeah. So then on the talent driver side, we've got Grayson again and Ali talking about basically talent driver selections. Grayson saying, Hulk and Tsunoda look like a value, and Ali is saying, he's got 14.1 million for a driver with Stroll locked out. So maybe we could talk about talent drivers and how we're approaching that for Baku. So I had mentioned earlier, I'm locked out of Alonso. My plan was to run Hulk, but I also have enough contract value to pick up someone else who I think would be interesting. I agree with what Ryan said. I'm not looking at Williams right now, and I'm also right now not looking at Racing Bulls, to be honest. Tsunoda has had a pretty disappointing performance in the app, in the game this year. So like, I'm not looking at Tsunoda. I'm not looking at Williams, and I'm not looking at Stroll. Right. Stroll, if I could pull it up quickly in the app. We call it the stroller coaster. So if you look at Lance Stroll's contract value over the course of time in the app, it is legitimately like a terrifying roller coaster. So you only want to ride the up and not the down. So yeah, YOLOing on Lance Stroll it's not a strategy. It's a YOLO. And if it works for you, more power to you. Who are you guys playing? Who are you guys avoiding? for
I
talent
will say
drivers.
Stroll is, if you need a Hail Mary, if you're okay with being like, I could get a 0 this weekend, but you're like, I need someone that people, I don't think a lot of people are going to be using Lance Stroll because of the obvious, what we talked about earlier. But I mean, he is still a play. He's just a very risky one. I'm shying away from it. I'm looking more for just like solid points and filling out the rest of my lineup with high value guys. But I would not fault anyone for going Stroll as long as they know that that's what they're in for.
Yeah, so I am somewhat constrained in terms of team budget, and so my choices are a bit thinner. I think it's going to come down to Friday practice for me. I think Stroll is on the table. I think I'm locked out of Alonso and Hulk. Maybe I need to double check. Like he's on the table, and then I'll be curious to see how the Alpines fare in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a direction you might want to look in, especially if you're trying to save funds. I'll be curious how Bearman looks in the Haas. Don't know how much seat time he's had with them in the past. So there's a few choices there. I'm also less enthusiastic about Williams. Obviously, not Sauber, and Sauber is clearly the worst car at this point. Uh, and Racing Bulls is trending in that direction, unfortunately. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts without seeing practice times. Like maybe Stroll, maybe Bearman, maybe the Alpines, depending on how they're looking.
I think I've got the Alpines crossed off just because I always have the Alpines crossed off. I have no interest in them ever, at any week, any track, anywhere. I actually have an eye on Sonoda. I really want to see how he looks in practice. I think that depending on how my budget shakes out, I could take him at a very low value. So I'm not as down on VCarb as it sounds like you guys are. But again, like I'm going to wait and see what practice looks like. And we'll go from there. But safest option, Alonso and Hulkenberg, I think. But yeah, I think there's a lot of cross-offs. I don't want either of the new guys. I definitely don't want a Sauber, and I don't want Alpines.
Yeah. It's there's an interesting point in the game where like the talent driver historically in the game, like last year or prior, when we get to this point in the game, you have a couple of talent drivers that are close to pricing out of being a talent driver eligible, but you just have Alonso. So especially when you're thinking about that's how I'm thinking about it, is like contract length right now. What talent drivers do I think I want available for what sprints? Because talent drivers for sprints are probably the most important selections you can make from a points generation standpoint. So that's why right now I'm kind of managing Alonso and Hulkenberg as like my safety pick, right? But if I'm looking at practice and I'm looking at times and I'm trying to make like a kind of a last minute pivot from them to have a gamble, I'm still very happy to have them on my team. There's still great points to contract value as long as they don't DNF. That goes for anyone though. And then I can go for a lower price driver and throw the star on them if I think they're going to have a breakout performance. Okay, we had. Ooh, I just missed it. Where was it? Okay, we have a lineup one. I have Hamilton, Hulk, McLaren, 53.9 million, locked out of Norris, Albon, K-Mag, 300 behind first place right now, and he's on a downtrend. Okay, well, even with 300 will probably take you 2 races. So you want to really be thinking about contract length to chase down 300 points. So if you can get on average 150 point gain on the person in first, you're winning. So 53.9. Hamilton, Hulk, McLaren. So you need some point scorers. You're locked out of Norris. I mean, I would probably go with Williams' advice and be looking at Ferrari, right? You have Leclerc at 28.5 and Sainz at 25.3. There's Russell at 22.8. So yeah, if we did some math real quick, I'm give you some suggestions here. But if we're working with, what was it again? 53.9. If I go the Ferrari route, 28.5 for Leclerc leaves you with 25.4.
For 2 drivers, right?
Yeah. No, he needs 3.
Well, for Hamilton. 2 after the first guy, after you've subbed in Leclerc already.
Yeah. And but he has Hulk.
So there's your talent guy.
There's your talent guy. So you've got Hamilton and Leclerc. That's two good blue chip drivers. You got a good talent driver, and you got 25.4 to fill out the rest of the lineup, and you got McLaren, which should do well for you. So, this is a situation where I wouldn't be mad to run Tsunoda. You could take 9.7 away to run Tsunoda, who's almost certainly going to kind of keep that. I don't think you're going to lose that contract value, and he might do better. And then you got 15.7 left, and you could basically pick the best of the rest. You could pick anyone from Ricardo down based on practice times. That's probably how I would think about it.
Yeah, your other option with that kind of budget is something like Alonso Zhou or Alonso Colapinto, where one best of the rest, one very sus driver.
Yeah. But if you are at a place where you need a cheap driver, I mean, I know we've had our concerns about Colapinto here, but he's the guy.
He has a higher ceiling than Zhou.
Yeah, if you need a cheap driver, it's Colapinto every time. Like, you're not going to spend the extra $1 million on Bottas. You're not going to try and save $2 million on Zhou.
Yeah, Zhou's going to be the last car running, like every week. Like if he's running, he's the last car running. Whereas I do think the Williams has a higher ceiling. They can at least be faster than Bottas as well.
Oh yeah.
Going through a few more. We have, I guess, more chats came in than I thought. I think we've got some 20 minutes here. I lost my position because the chat went all the way down to the bottom. I'm sorry. Let me catch up. Where are we?
Are you really talking up Ferrari? Yes, because street courses. I look at how they performed on street courses, and I'm somewhat encouraged. And they do have a little momentum coming from Monza. And like if Red Bull slips up again, like they could actually stick themselves in the fight for seconds in the constructors. So Ferrari's still got something to play for here.
Yeah. Cam Bryden, thoughts on consistent top points? McLaren right now, it used to be, Verstappen was your safety bet for points, but right now it's looking more like McLaren. I'm going to try and blast through a few of these so this way we can do some more lineup reviews. I have 42.3 for two drivers. I have Russell, Hulk, Tsunoda, and Aston. Hamilton and Albon locked, considering dropping Tsunoda because he's been horrible. What do you guys think? 42.3, I would say you are missing a papaya car. So out of that 42.3, I'm looking for Norris or Piastri on that lineup. So if you do 28.6 for Piastri, it gives you 13.7 left. You're right. Basically Albon and below at that point. I know Albon's locked for you.
Stroller coaster is
a move.
13 million. I would ride the stroller coaster. Go. Yep. Long before taking anyone else under him.
Yeah. And
Baku,
I don't think
Baku has produced some chaotic races as well. So keep that in mind. Like Lance Stroll finished second once. There was a lot of weird stuff that happened that day. And so that's the other thing with Baku.
I came into this show being like, there's no way I can have Lance Stroll on my lineup, but I think I'm getting closer and closer to maybe doing that. This is dangerous.
We were just meters away from hearing "Oh Canada" on the podium that day.
Cool. Next one. In a strange spot. Total team value 123 million. Good job. 23.2 million available. Have Norris, Piastri, Russell, Albon, Colapinto, no constructor. Thinking maybe sell Russell depending on practice, making my total available 45.3. I don't see why you would need to do that. You could pick up Mercedes and just park that 23 million. Like I don't unless something, obviously horrible happens to Mercedes, you could just put, I don't hate your lineup at all. You have Norris, Piastri, Russell, Albon, Colapinto. Like if you think Albon is going to be a good talent driver selection for Baku, I would just park that money in Mercedes. Like if, so long as both cars finish the race where they should finish the race, like you won't gain much, you won't lose much. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, Mercedes seems fine to me.
Yeah.
I mean, The more exotic play would probably be to swap Colapinto for Zhou and then go for Ferrari. But that's really getting adventurous. I like it the other way. I'd rather have Colapinto and Mercedes, just because,
Yeah.
like we said before, Colapinto has a higher ceiling than Zhou. Also, I would say Mercedes still has a pretty high ceiling. Like Mercedes could double podium on a given week.
Mm-hmm.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I don't hate Mercedes at all.
No, I think that's a good move. It's the only thing I would say is, just watch practice just to see if you feel differently about Albon Colapinto, then make a change there. Not with Russell, in my opinion. I think this is a good one for you, William. You always have good thoughts on this. Do you think Ollie would be a good pickup for one race, or do you think he'll struggle in the Haas compared to the Ferrari?
Okay, so let's look at it sort of in a vacuum between Bearman and the other drivers at his price point. Unless we see something surprising in practice, like it is entirely possible that he could beat the Alpines. Like he'll beat the Saubers. Um, I think he's a better driver than Colapinto. So in Bearman, I don't think has a lot of room to climb is the downside. Like that would be the argument against Bearman. But if we're talking about one race and we're trying to get the most bang for our 11.6 million, I don't hate Bearman unless we see something weird in practice. Yeah, so I could get behind that, like in that vacuum. Like if we're talking about, well, if we start making other changes, there might be a more optimal configuration. That said, Bearman does have the same problem as Colapinto, rookie on a street course. And, there's a lot of walls. And the walls are not that forgiving.
Yep. I think Bearman pretty clearly has a higher ceiling than everyone down in that price point, but also a lower floor.
Yeah, if Magnussen didn't just get 2 million in contract value and then Bearman took over, I would be more so looking to get Bearman for a one race contract. But since Magnussen just delivered that result, it just makes it a little challenging for Bearman in a selection for a contract now.
I'd love him a lot better sub 10. I agree with you.
I was just about to say.
Yeah. All right. Chris Voice, like Mike, I have a thin lead of my league in points and value. I never said thin. It's healthy. It's thinning. Yes. Like part of my hair. Would you sell Ver for Pia? Already have Nor locked out of Leclerc. This is where Ryan and I are going to have like differing opinions. Ryan is like, sell, like pay a contract value if you don't think it's going to get you the points you want. I'm a little more conservative at this point in the season. So I would say I would probably stick with Verstappen unless something spooked me in practice. But otherwise, Ryan, what do you think? Are you paying the drop fee for Pia over Verstappen?
I mean, I would, just because of the team value I have, because I've been so good all season at picking all the best drivers and being very good at the game. So I have all this money to play with. But if I was someone like Mike that's extremely scared in a very precarious situation, I don't know if I would be giving away team value because you might need that down the stretch. So it sounds, Chris, I think you and Mike should maybe like get a chat together, because it sounds like you need a support group.
I want to see how practice goes, obviously, but I think I teased this a few times. Like Red Bull on street horses scares me these days. Like I feel more comfortable with the McLaren than the Red Bull on a street course. That said, we don't have to make these decisions until we've seen practice times. Yeah. But like if Red Bull's looking terrible, like say Monaco, then absolutely bail on Verstappen. I've got a lot of open spots. I am not dying to sign Verstappen. Not this week, not next week.
Give me Verstappen in Austin. If he has a bad race this week and maybe a bad race in Singapore, and you're looking at him at 24, and he signed the rest of the year easy.
Yeah, absolutely. But right now I'm not really rushing to sign anything Red Bull the next couple of races. So yeah, it's a consideration. And like if Piastri's looking a lot better than Verstappen, then you could consider making that move and hopefully reaping a bunch of points for that.
Agreed. Couple questions in the chat about Alonso, Hulkenberg, talent driver selections. Hulkenberg didn't have the best showing at Monza. I don't think that's indicative of anything longer term. I still think Alonso and Hulkenberg are both good talent driver recommendations. And here's the thing, right? Is like if you're like thinking about Alonso or Hulkenberg, what I do if I'm in that situation is I look at the league adoption stats in the app. And then if I see, okay, hey, my league is skewing Alonso, my league is skewing Hulkenberg, my league is skewing whatever. I think about doing a contrarian play, right? If 60% of my league is likely has the same talent driver, then there's points opportunity to not have that talent driver if that talent driver outperforms their 8 race average and their where you would expect them to come out. And the other thing is, like, when you're talking about Alonso and Hulkenberg, they're likely going to be within probably 10 points. If both of them do what they should do, they'll be within 10 points of each other, right? So it's 20 as a talent driver. It's not the end of the world. So like, I wouldn't sweat it too much. And I would look at the league adoption stats, and like looking at the league adoption stats, like that's when like you can make a move for the stroller coaster. Like if your league has no one on Lance Stroll for Baku, it's 0% league adoption, and Stroll shows up and doesn't crash and is right there with Alonso, you're going to crush everyone. You're going to get 60 extra points on that selection. So that's kind of the strategy you want to be looking at for talent driver selection. Like, what's my league doing, and can a contrarian play pay off?
Yep. And if you're in first in your league, then you really don't need to care about that too much. There's really nothing wrong with running someone that everybody else is running. But if you're trying to make up ground, then that's when you're really going to want to take a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
I see an interesting question. Would you, from 4Killa, would you sign Ferrari drivers for 2 or 3 races? Well, 4 and 5 are also possibilities. So the next 2 races are street courses. We've talked that up ad nauseum, that Ferrari's potentially good there. Then you have a sprint race with Austin. I don't know what kind of pace Ferrari's going to have at Austin, but Leclerc would be a pretty solid choice generally to give you a result in a sprint race. And if you look past that, like the race after that is Mexico. Mexico is similar to Monza in terms of how much downforce you get, because the air is very thin in Mexico City. It's like 8,000 feet elevation or something like that. So they run Monaco wings and get Monza downforce. We just saw Ferrari do well on a low downforce track. So Mexico, you could make the case for Ferrari, especially if they're still bringing upgrades and trying to fight for seconds. And then you have a sprint after that. Brazil is a sprint, and same deal. So like 4 races is on the table. 5 races is on the table, but you could also justify 2 races or even 1. Like maybe you take Leclerc 1 week, you take Sainz the next week, and you have Leclerc lined up for Austin and not on cool down. So I think you could justify any of the contract length options, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, when you have 2 drivers on the same team, only one of them is going to score teammate points. That's another consideration. Like it's not something that's like making or breaking my lineup, but like if I'm close on a choice, I consider that, because if I can't score teammate points, my ceiling is slightly lower.
Yeah, this one could be a little tricky. There's a couple ways to crack this nut. I have Hamilton, Richard Anderson. I have Hamilton, Alonso, Colapinto, and Ferrari. So need 2 drivers, Piastri and Zhou locked, 28.4. So if you have 28.4 and you already have Colapinto, Hamilton and Alonso will be your talent driver most likely. Hamilton is your likelihood for top point scorer. 2 drivers left. Zhou locked out. I mean, you basically you have to run Bottas or Tsunoda, right? You have to go. You might have to go Bottas. So if you go Bottas, that gives you 21.4 left. No, it probably doesn't. No. Yeah, this
Yeah,
one's
it doesn't
tricky.
help. Once you're under 22, it's like it's such a drop off that
Yeah, you're better off trying to split the difference and get two mid packers on 28.4 rather than going high low. So if he would,
Sonoda Stroll.
you could do like a stroll. You could do an Albon stroll. Wait, who is he locked out of again?
Piastri and
Piastri and
Joe.
Joe. Oh, so you could do a Hulk Albon. You could do Hulk Albon. You could do a Hulk Stroll if you're liking Stroll. If Alpine's looking good, you could do Gasly. Yeah, but I would actually probably go up. You could wait. You could do Hulk Ricardo too. I actually, yeah. Now thinking about this, I would basically divide. Was it 28.4 divided by 2 and try and maximize your spend on points. And that's like or Ricardo Hulk, or a Hulk Albin, something like that. Any other thoughts? We can get to the next one. We got 5 minutes left. Let's
Yeah,
try.
I think like of those drivers that we just mentioned, whoever's looking good in practice, go that route. Is my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because like V carb could just be trash.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me say this before as we're getting closer to time. For any of the questions we haven't gotten to yet, or any of the people who are asking for like 5 driver lineups, that's like a big ask. Click the Discord link in the pinned message on the top of the chat. Join the Discord. Put the question in there. There's a bunch of people in there that help, and sometimes if William and I have time, we will also pop in there and give some feedback.
Or the paddock.
Or the paddock on the app. Click paddock in the bottom right hand corner. There's a lineup chat section. You could ask questions there as well. There was a good one. 2 spots open, 58 million. Piastri and Sainz locked. I assume I should go with Leclerc Verstappen contract length.
I don't know about Verstappen.
Yeah.
Like I might look in the Mercedes direction or the Sainz direction. No wait, Sainz is locked. I might look at the Mercedes direction, and then we just had the discussion about the upcoming sprints, and how we might decide to set our contract lengths with, say, Ferrari.
Yeah, if you end up going Verstappen, that's a one race contract for me.
Mm-hmm.
Get him off for
but you need to
Singapore,
have
and then
him
you
lined
can
up for Austin.
then you have him
Yeah.
lined up for the big ones.
Or you could go 3 or 5, and then you have him on cooldown for Mexico or for Vegas. Which actually, I don't hate having Verstappen on cooldown for Vegas because street course.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go 5 now, that's when they'd be on cooldown.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think Leclerc Verstappen's a good move, and I would go longer on the Verstappen because also if they bring upgrades, they're going to be bringing upgrades as soon as possible. And again, this is something I say: upgrades aren't upgrades until they're proven on the track. Until then, they're just changes. So let me rephrase: Red Bull is probably going to bring a lot of changes. So if I would probably consider going longer on Verstappen, shorter on Leclerc, and that will maximize your flexibility with that money to go back to McLaren or pick up Mercedes or make any moves you need to make.
And there is basically a month between Singapore and Austin, so I suspect you'd see a bunch of upgrades for Austin from anybody who's still fighting. Yeah. Probably like McLaren, Red Bull, maybe Ferrari.
Yeah, same person said, I also have Merck for another 2 races, wondering if I should consider dropping them. Yeah, we answered that a little bit earlier. We said no. McLaren's a pretty safe place to put money right now for points. Just make sure you have the right contract lengths for what constructors you want to run for the sprints. Constructors don't earn sprint points, so a popular strategy is go cheaper on constructors so you could spend more on drivers through the sprints. Cool. All right, we've got a couple more left. We talked about Alpine. You have to wait for practice. I have 51.4 million in the bank with Russell, Sainz, Piastri, 2 drivers in a constructor spot with Tsunoda, Stroll, Ferrari locked out. It's a lot of lockouts. Bit stumped to what to do this week. All right, so you have Russell, Sainz, and Piastri. So you're doing good. Like you're not in a bad spot. 51.4. You need 2 drivers, and you're locked out of Tsunoda, Stroll, so you're fine. You Alonso 16.7 for a possible talent driver selection. You could always save money going a little bit lower. Then you have 34.7 left for right. Am I missing something?
Yeah, then you go like cheap driver, and then you go for like Mercedes or McLaren. I don't know how the numbers work out off the top of my head, but yeah, you could make a very reasonable constructor choice.
Yeah, very reasonable constructor choice.
Yeah.
You got pick of all of the best constructors, and then fill out the rest with the driver. That's what I would do.
I'm jealous. Like I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Okay. I'm looking through. You guys see anyone that I'm just
Somebody
trying to.
made the point. Bearman won Baku last year in Formula 2.
Uh-huh.
Good to know. Formula 1 car is a bit more powerful, and Cost will be unfamiliar, but he's been around the track and he's kept it in one piece. So he's not totally green, which is good to know. Still always a little bit of a risk.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like Saudi Arabia is like practically a street circuit. So
yeah, there's a few lineup reviews left here, but we're out of time. But we almost made it to all of them. So yeah, for any of the ones that we didn't get a chance to answer, go ahead and get those into the paddock or into Discord. And hope everyone has a great race week. Thank you for joining us, and we are here if you need us. Bye, everyone.
bye.